Marathon chase. Leading the way, our defending women's champion, Stacy and Diwa. She ran 2 hours and 31 minutes and 4 seconds for her personal best last year, but she learned a lot, and she's trained specifically for the hills on this course and expects a much faster time today.
Defending her title will not be easy with the likes of Olga Mazuronak, the three-time national champion from Belarus. She is now living in Southern California, but she was 5th at the Olympic Games in 2020, so she knows how to run with the best in the world.
And leading the American charge, McKenna Morley out of Bozeman, Montana, runner-up last year at the U.S. Cross Country Championship, made her debut in Chicago in 2022, ran 2 hours and 30 minutes, but she expects to go with this lead pack, and victory is not out of sight.
One of the gentlemen working at my hotel that I'm staying in while visiting the city is a product of the Students Run LA program. They have a great graduate percentage. Right now we're looking at the professional women on the starting line, and this is just part of the story, right? These professional races unfolding and getting ready to unfold, but there's so many inspiring groups out there, the LA Road Runners, the Venice Run Club that we saw an interview with earlier from Chris Schabel, the legacy runners who have run every edition of this race, the charity runners, all getting ready to make their way from Dodger Stadium to Century City.
Yeah, so many storylines on this marathon morning as you take a look at the elite women. We're going to take a break, come back with the women, the elite women starting as you look at the wheelchair division that are underway, and we will continue our coverage here on KTLA 5. Back with the pro women's start of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS.
Yeah, Brian was alluding to that on the start line, and Tony's kind of the mastermind of that chase, crunching the numbers to figure out the lead that the women will get over the masses, over the men. And so this is really exciting and anticipating time. I knew there's a lot of nerves and anticipation on the starting line, but as soon as that gun goes off, they step into the space, step into what they do every day and really come into their own. So this is the most nerve-wracking part of any marathon, is just before the gun. You could see it on their faces, a little nerves, a little tension, some nervous laughter, but all these women ready to fend off the men with the 26.2 miles ahead of them.
I think they realize that they have to work together to try to put the distance on the men. It's easier in many ways being the hunter than it is the hunted. And so the women don't know where the men are, even though both genders will be given time indications along the way. There'll be whiteboards like you see at the Tour de France telling them how many seconds in front of or behind pace they are at that particular point, 5K, 10K, 15K, etc. But the women I've talked to say they understand that they've got to work together if they hope to fend off the men.
Right,
and you see Rachel Hanna.
Right, from Canada, a 2:32 marathoner. At her best, she won the Indianapolis Marathon last year.
We have about 30 seconds. Dina, do you have a strategy at this point? Have you communicated with people? Are you going to work together? Are there pacers out there?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of working together, maybe in the beginning stages of the race, that they run as a pack and kind of feed off of each other and self-assess and assess their competition around them, because really they're running two races today simultaneously. They're running against the other women around them, but they're also really trying to fend off the men for that $10,000 bonus.
All right.
Last minute prayers at the start line are always a good idea.
We found out very quickly in a marathon the personality of the particular race. If somebody goes out hard, now we all go out hard. If somebody doesn't go to the front, you can quickly start looking for a leader. And that's what happened last year for the men. The women went out at a very good, steady state, about 2 hours, 27-minute pace throughout the first part of the race. And the men dawdled a little bit. They couldn't find a race leader. And it took them a long period of time before they decided to really start running. And by the time they decided to start going, too much time had elapsed and the women held them off by 32 seconds. The men could have won the race if they just would have begun their push 1 mile earlier. So that's the intrigue of the McCourt Foundation Marathon Chase, is how this whole thing plays out with the two sexes running in a virtual competition between themselves.
And as Tony has been crunching the numbers for the past couple of weeks with overs and unders and getting the means and the medians of all the personal bests that these athletes have run, I hope that you can beat your personal best, Tony, from 2022 when we had the closest finish in this chase at 8 seconds. It came down to an 8-second margin. The women won that race. They've won 9 out of the 13 chases that have been a part of the LA Marathon edition.
And the last 5. Here you've seen the closest chase finishes in 2022 in just 8 seconds. In that 22-20 race, it was Melvin Marangor from Ethiopia holding off John Career from Kenya. Throughout the entire first 25.5 miles of the race, John Career and the men were ahead of schedule to catch the women. Only the last half mile did they fall behind as she held them off. That's Olga Mazuryonak from Belarus on the right in the aqua colors, and our defending champion Stacy Ndiwa with the white tee underneath her black top leading the way. Those are the 2 real favorites in the race.
It looks like they've already separated amongst themselves. There's about 6 up front. We're going to take a break right here as we continue our coverage of the 39th running of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. Look at the masses. We're back with more in just a moment. And again, what we're talking about is that the women elites field took off at 6:43 exactly. The men were supposed to leave at 7 a.m., which was a 17-minute head start, but they took off, we believe, around, was it 6:56, Tony?
I thought, yeah, but they were already started when we came back at 6:56, so they added a minute to that, the 6:55. So that's 5 minutes early. That's only 12 minutes behind the women, so that kind of eliminates the way this thing has been structured and set up, so that I don't know what they do with the $10,000 bonus now, because it's no longer a fair competition.
I think they divided up between the broadcast teams. So the men have started on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see them making their way out of Dodger Stadium. A gorgeous sunrise in the backdrop of them. Take to the streets.
Well, we talked about it at 6:43. The women elite field took off. These 6 women broke out together. They've been working together. And Tony, what can you tell us about the early splits?
Well, the women are running very solid. 5:42, 5:26, 5:35, 5:34. I mean, very even. They're going uphill right now, going near the, past 4 miles, heading toward the 5th mile. There's their first aid station. And you see how important it is. People will stop and actually go back if they miss it. In front right now, that's number 122, that's Kamesha Sichala from Ethiopia, a 2:26 personal best. She's an ASICS runner. She was 11th at the Hamburg Marathon last year. Her first race is giving birth to a daughter, and her manager says she's in better shape now than she was when she ran that 2:26. But also our leader Stacy Ndiwa, defending champion, playing point, whereas Victor Kipchirchir has a significant lead, Dina, right away on the men's side. And he is running, and this is a very aggressive pace. Once you establish a pace, it's almost easier to maintain that pace or go a little bit faster. It's very difficult to slow down and maintain a rhythm.
All right, we have some drama here in the chase already. We will take a break as we continue our coverage here on the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. We are back with plenty more right after this.
7 a.m., so maybe they can chase the women. Although I don't think they have a prayer in that regard, as our top 6 women continue to lead the way.
It looks like it's 5 now.
5, led by Stacy Ndiwa. And right alongside her, with the pink stripe on the right-hand side, is Kamesha Sichala from Ethiopia. He's one of our blind runners with a guide being chased down by the women.
And in that women's pack is McKenna Morley of the United States. She's our U.S. hopeful there. Do you know that someone from the United States has not won this race since 1994? It is a 30-year drought for Americans winning the LA Marathon. The last Americans to win it were Olga Appel and Paul Pilkington in the same year. So McKenna Morley on the left of your screen is our U.S. hopeful on the women's side. There you see a split screen. The men have bunched back up. The pack has absorbed Victor. Victor His last name, Kipchirchir, actually means, in Kenyan, it means born in a hurry. And I think he lived up to his name at the start of this race, getting out of Dodger Stadium first and blasting to the front. But now they are running as a pack, which is much more efficient to be able to feed off the people around you, take a mental break, and insert yourself into the pack. So there are the women.
If we just got our first 5K split on men, 14:29, very, very fast. And if the chase was started properly, the men would be, or Victor Kipchirchir, I should say, 48 seconds advantage at 5K. Now, they picked up 48 seconds. It was supposed to be a 2-minute gap when you split it up. A 17-minute advantage split up into 5K increments is 2 minutes for every 5 kilometers. And the men are only, are 2 minutes and 48 seconds difference between their 5K split of 14:29 and the women of 17:17. So it means they picked up 48 seconds right there. So that's how fast Victor Kipchirchir went out. But it seems to me that he has calmed himself down a bit as the others are now caught up on his backside.
I'm wondering mentally, when you come out so aggressively and you take somewhat of a lead and then the pack kind of catches you, does that mess with you mentally, Dina?
Not this early.
I don't think this early. I think you're right, Tony. But I do think it does burn glycogen, and that's what you're trying to fend off by getting your fluids and taking in calories.
It wouldn't be as efficient as possible. And when you go tearing off at 4:34 and 4:47, there's no reason for it. You're just sort of dumping fuel that you're going to need later in the day. Like we were saying, in 2022, Zane Robertson took off at very much the same sort of pace. And at 9 miles, I look at my notes, Zane fading back. So there can be a penalty for early mistakes in the marathon.
Olga Mazuronak from Belarus in the blue and electric yellow. She is now living in Southern California, did a lot of her training in Kenya leading up to this race, and before that just north in Mammoth Lakes, California, putting in a few early miles. But she is one of our favorites making this turn, and the cameramen are really doing a great job at getting the angles to show how hilly this course can be.
She looks like she's settled into a really nice rhythm.
Knows how to race this course. We know that, but we wonder where Josh Cassidy is, number 52 from Canada, who's the fastest man in the field.
And then the women's elite field that got started at 6:43 this morning, and it's pretty much been these 5 women for the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's Olga Mazuronak from Belarus, our defending champion, Stacy Ndiwa, right in the middle with the black and white top. We have Kameshi Sichala from Ethiopia. She's an ASICS athlete. She's behind Olga. And then we've got Atseda Baisa, the former Chicago and Boston champion, behind McKenna Morley on the left, another ASICS athlete. So those are the 5 who have been running incredibly steady pace, Dina. They ran 17 minutes, 17 seconds for the first 5 kilometers, 17 minutes and 16 seconds for the next 5K. And that includes all those rolling hills in the first 5 miles of this course.
Right, and I love that they're running together. You could see they're working together. They found a rhythm, found a groove, which is hard to do on this course with all the undulations, the hills, and the turns that are involved. It's Sidi Baisa, who's on the right of your screen behind American McKenna Morley. She has won the Chicago Marathon twice, the Boston Marathon, Paris, Florence, Istanbul. She is so endowed and has so many accolades at the marathon distance. One of my favorite stories is in 2016, after winning the Boston Marathon. It was the 50th anniversary of Bobby Gibb, who bandited the Boston Marathon to prove that women could run the marathon distance. It was the 50th anniversary, so she gave her winning trophy to Bobby Gibb that year. And so I think that's a very special accolade when we are now this year celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. Joan Benoit Samuelson, who won the first ever Olympic gold medal in the women's marathon, will be holding the finish line tape today.
All right, we're going to take a break from the race. Let's get it out to Lauren Lister, who is standing by. Thank you very much. What a inspiration he is as we take a look at the elite women and the elite men as they continue to make their way out on the course. We will come back with their stories as we continue our coverage of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS exclusively here on KTLA 5.
It wouldn't be surprising that the lead vehicles couldn't keep up with Josh Cassidy. That wouldn't be far-fetched, but it does look like in front of San Clemente are the lead vehicles. So a little discrepancy there. As soon as we get that fleshed out, we will bring you the details of that. The split screens are really allowing us to enjoy all the races as they unfold. It looks like the races are down to 5 on the women's side, 4 on the men's side. Belai from Ethiopia is just falling off that pack of 4, and as we went to break, it was Dominic Ngino who almost missed his water bottle. He had to kind of step back and make sure he got it. Those calories are so critical at this point in the race because you're always trying to top off your glycogen stores. A great shot of the men as they're in sync running together here in this race.
We go back to the elite races that we are tracking for you here on KTLA 5. We're going to take a break in our coverage, continue the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. Back in a moment. We're back and look at the scene as we have the elite field, the elite men on your right, the elite women in the center, and the wheelchair leader on your left. The giving back, and it's amazing how his legacy continues on as we go back to the front of the race where the men, women, and wheel elite divisions are off to such a strong start. Tony, what can you tell us about the early splits?
I've been crunching those numbers. The men are on 2:08 flat pace, 2:08 marathon pace. The women are on 2:25:30 marathon pace. They've been running such consistent splits, 5:35 to 5:40. Right now, I mean, if the chase had been started properly, the projected finish would have been 17 minutes and 30 seconds difference, which means the men would win by 30 seconds because they needed 17 minutes and they're making up 17:30. But since the men started 5 minutes early, we don't quite know what to do with all of that. I'll tell you like this with Dina, we're talking on the break. If the women actually win and get ahead of the men, give them the 10,000. But if the men don't catch them, something's really wrong because they started 5 minutes early. So it's almost like we got to figure out how to divvy up that $10,000 in the McCourt Foundation Marathon Chase money because it didn't start as it was scheduled to.
And Olga Mazurёnok from Belarus, the 3-time national champion, has been leading much of this race. As you see here, she's in the blue and electric yellow. She knows how to win heated competition. She was 5th at the Tokyo Olympic Games, so knows how to run this distance, knows how to compete in the best in the world. To her left is U.S. hopeful McKenna Morley. I love McKenna's style of running. She is a great cross-country runner. She was part of a national championship team at her college at CU. She now trains in Montana, but I think her very first marathon taught her so much. She ran the Chicago Marathon, was 10th place, ran 2:30, thought that she could learn so much from that race and really went home and put in the work that it takes. She was injured, which kept her out of the Olympic marathon trials just last month, and I think a little bit of redemption from not being able to compete at that level is really going to come into play when she has to dig deeper for this race in the final stages to shake off the 4 women around her.
Just to let you know, there's a real political story with Olga Mazuronak. She's in Belarus. In the 2020 national elections for president, there was a huge protest nationally, and Olga was one of 350 athletes who signed an open letter of protest for what they consider a fraudulent election for the Lukashenko government going for the 6th term. Well, the government came down hard on those protesters after national protests that last six or 7 months. Well, she was basically fired from her job, from her team. Her salary was cut by a factor of 5. She was forced to leave the country, but it took a couple of years to do that. So the last race she's ever run was a 5th place at the Olympic Marathon in Tokyo in 2021. She took till summer of 2023 to emigrate to the United States, settled in Irvine, California with her 15-year-old son, Dennis, and has been training. As I said, she's been training on her own. She has no team, she has no manager, she has no support whatsoever. And this is the first race she's run in almost 3 years. She has spent 5 weeks in Kenya, just past the 20-kilometer mark. She spent 5 weeks in Kenya where she used to train, on her way to that 5th place finish, not only in the 2021 Olympic Games, she was also 5th in the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. She was number 5 in the 2019 World Championships Marathon, and she's the 2018 European Marathon Champion. She's a former race walker of all things, but turned distance runner. She's one of the best in the world, but she has been so compromised and repressed by the government back home that she's now stateless. She can't run any Olympic Games because the World Athletics has banned both Russian and Belarusian athletes from going to the Olympic Games because of the war in Ukraine. So it's essentially I liken it to the apartheid athletes of South Africa. The black athletes were being punished for being black in South Africa and then being punished internationally for being from South Africa. Olga is being punished for her protest back home for the government, and now she's being punished by World Athletics because of what the government has done.
I noticed on that last water break, she didn't take any water, Dina.
Right, and that could have been a strategic decision. Sometimes the athletes are carrying other nutritional sources in the pockets of their clothing, so she might have some sort of gel in there to consume later in the race. It's really whatever you're practicing with is what's going to work for you. As Olga and McKenna lead this marathon mile after mile, we have to mention the strength of the women just off their shoulders. That's Stacy Ndiwa in the back of the screen with the white tank top under her black singlet. She is our defending champion, just trying to get in all of her fluids before tossing her bottle to the side. Also in front of her, Kumeshi Sachala from Ethiopia. She has been on the podium of every marathon she's run in Slovakia, in India, in Warsaw, in Latvia. So she is also a very decorated athlete in there. And then of course, Aside Baisa from Ethiopia, who's won Chicago, Boston, Paris, the A6 Florence Marathon, and a marathon in Istanbul. There is so much talent equally matched in this field as they consume their fluids, toss them to the side, and hope that those calories are going to work for them in the miles ahead. And if you look at this race, you have Belarus, Ethiopia, Kenya, USA. This is a really great showing from their countries, whereas on the men's side, we have a Kenyan masterclass on how to marathon run.
All right, we talk about the marathon generally. We're focused on the runners, but there's a whole lot more that goes into making an event like this happen. Here's a look at some of those who spend their morning not by running, but by supporting those in this race.
Dominic Ngino of Kenya with the blue hat has made sure to get all of his water bottles after nearly missing one. He looks to be pushing the pace a little. Maybe seeing the women up the road is a little bit more of an incentive and a lure to reel them in for that $10,000 bonus ahead of them.
I talked to Dominic Ngeno's manager, Tom Broadbent from the UK, and he's saying he thinks he'll win the race. He's trained specifically for this course and thinks a 2:09 is definitely possible. He watched the race last year from his home in Kenya. So he actually watched the Los Angeles Marathon Hour coverage last year, got him excited, decided to enter the race this year, and he thinks he knows the course because he watched it on TV.
Balai Bazab from Ethiopia has reattached himself to this pack. So he was drifting off a little bit, was able to maintain contact, and you see him in the black and electric orange A6 uniform off of the back of this pack, trying to reattach himself so that the leaders can do the work for him.
He's been lingering just off that back the whole way, which is kind of frustrating for him, but as long as Dina, there's two types of contact. There's physical contact, which the four guys in front have, but then there's psychological contact, where somebody might be in front of you, but you feel that you can reel them in when you want to.
Yes, and maybe he's going through some ebbs and flows during these middle stages of the race, so he's able to ride them to his own advantage if he's a little off of them, whereas if he was attached, he'd have to ride the surges that are happening in the main pack. So this is a living, breathing thing, these packs. You can come into a marathon race with a plan A and a plan B, but someone makes a move and completely disrupts that, and you have to be ready to react and know what you can react to, what your body is capable of, and be able to run and race within those parameters. So the packs are down to 5 in both the men's and the women's races. The women's race, Ethiopia, Kenya, Belarus, USA, men's side, Kenya. And so it's going to be exciting as the race goes on that these men can see the women in their sights. They're down the roads. When we get to some of these longer stretches of road, they can see the other women, the other racers, the lead vehicles in front of them to be able to reel them in.
Starting to lose McKenna Morley here at 1 hour and 20 minutes into the race. Right?
Yeah, McKenna was our hopeful for the U.S. Again, it could just be a patch or maybe a little bit of a surge that Olga is putting in, who's been leading much of this race. So McKenna, if she can maintain contact, she may be able to reattach herself like Belai did on the men's side.
It looks like they're on a decline right now?
Absolutely.
Yes, they are. And just so you know, the wheelchair, San Clemente, is past 25 miles, so he's getting near. There he is on the left-hand side of the screen.
So he's made the turn. He's coming down the backstretch.
Yeah, he's heading towards Century City, and he is really, you can just tell by his stroke that he's got a lot of push left in him. Like in running, we always said you want to have running left in your legs in the latter stages, especially on this new Century City finish line course, because it's upgrade and then actually a hill in the final kilometer. So it really, if all you've got is your momentum to go on, this stretch of the course can rob you of that. But he looks like he's set something left in the tank.
A double champion to celebrate here at the finish line. Now we have our split screen showcasing our top 5 men and 5 women, maybe 5 men and 4 women. The leads haven't changed much. If it does shift a little bit, the paces are staying the same, and those men are closing in on the women quickly as they are in the same mile.
You can just see McKenna Morley right there in the back. She's still within range.
She is still there, and if she can maintain contact, she might be able to reconnect with this lead pack. There are so many ups and downs within the span of a marathon race, and she already looks like she has gained a little bit of road, although some of these angles on the camera can be deceptive. She said to Chris Schabel at the starting line of the race that the silver lining to being injury-free now is that she's ready for this. She may have missed the Olympic marathon trials. It would have been her second marathon there. This is only her second marathon. She is still so young in this sport and has so much of her career ahead of her. This is a really great experience regardless. You learn with every race.
We will continue our coverage. You see the elite women and, of course, our back-to-back champion, Francisco San Clemente of Colombia, our first finisher of the day. Quick break. We continue our coverage of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS in just a minute. I welcome you back to the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS, and for family and friends with someone running in today's race, Pechanga Resorts Casino and Resorts is the sponsor of text-to-screen messaging. Send your messages of support to 515151. Message and data rates apply. What a tremendous commitment that must be as we take a look.
He looked great.
Yeah, phenomenal. To be a part of something like this for so long is so special. And then, of course, the women elite field. We've been talking about the story of Olga Mazuronak from Belarus. What a tremendous story. And if she were to hold on and win this LA Marathon. I mean, how tremendous would that be considering all that she has gone through?
Well, there's no more motivated athlete in this field. I mean, she's got nothing. She just started her life here in America. I asked her why she chose Irvine. She says because of her schools. Her son Dennis is in ninth grade right now. But again, here's a two-time fifth placer in the Olympic marathon, one of the best runners in the world, and because of the political strife back home, she's been forced to leave her country and emigrate to the United States. And now she's free, but she's trained in Kenya before her previous marathons in the Olympic Games. But before, she'd always come back and stay at sea level for a couple of weeks before the competition. This is the first race where she came directly from altitude in Kenya to Los Angeles and racing this weekend. Now, Dina, some people prefer to have that gap between altitude and racing, and other people come right on the scene. And a lot of it isn't physiological, it's psychological.
Yes, a lot of our talk before the coverage was whether you come down 2 weeks before to recover or come down right before the race. Really, the greatest advice I got when trying to figure that out and the height of my career was just get supremely fit and your body can do anything. So I think getting fit, but she did do that. She put in all the work. She put in the sacrifice at training in Kenya, training at altitude in Mammoth Lakes, California, and then coming here with that same training camp focus to be able to win the race.
And she trained all by herself in Kenya and all by herself in Irvine as well. And that might be to her advantage today, where she's doing all the work. You've got a two-time Chicago and Boston Marathon champion on her right shoulder at Seda Baisa. You've got one of the best in Ethiopia in Sichala in the Adidas kit with the red, and then you have the defending champion Stacy and Diwa in the back. But there is a penalty, is there not, Dina, for doing all the work in a race? If you're the front runner all the time, it's just easier on the other athletes sitting in your wake.
Yeah, and it could be that Olga is a front runner. She might be the type of person that feels comfortable leading and making the women commit to her pace and how she wants to ride this course. So as they navigate these turns, this is the point in the race where I try to look for people that aren't navigating the turns as gracefully if there's any fatigue setting in, but all four of these women still look really good. Olga taking a lot of the brunt of pacing here, but she could feel like she's the alpha when she's out in front leading. Yeah,
there's nothing in their form, Darren, right now which tells you that somebody is struggling. Those four are still locked right in. Same thing could be said on the men's side.
It's fascinating because just over the years of covering these races with you guys, I'm looking at Olga's stride, and she is as smooth as butter. I mean, very economical stride. It's very easy going.
Look how easy Stacy's shoulders are. Look how easy her arms are. There's a little bit more arm waggle with Olga than there is with Stacy. Stacy's arms very close together. I'd see the Baisa on the far left of the screen. The same thing. Arms very nicely tucked in. Efficient. This is a fuel management game. And how much fuel can you save for the later stages in the race? It all has to do with how efficient you can be throughout the journey.
At what point, Dina, do you start to put your foot on the pedal a little bit and start pushing?
Yeah, it depends on when you get antsy, but the rule of thumb is that you don't make any severe moves before the 20-mile mark, because the last 10K really tends to wear and tear on you. So you do want to try to be with the pack through 20 miles, and then we'll start to see some real racing. But there are some tells now early in the race, like McKenna Morley just dropping off the pack probably at that 5:07 mile 15 we saw on our screen, that the pace picked up. It was a slight downhill, so it is deceiving to read those splits, but that increase of pace is what made McKenna drop off of pace here.
Traditionally speaking, at the World Marathon Majors, the Boston, New York, Chicago's, Berlin, and Tokyo, and London, where they have pacers, the pacers will go to 30 kilometers, 18.6 miles. Then the favorites will kind of look around and regather themselves for 5K, and the real racing has a tendency to begin at 35 kilometers, which is 21.7 miles. So it's a long run leading to a short race. And right now we're still seeing that here in Los Angeles on both the men and women's side, where it's a good, solid, steady pace, but there's no overt racing going on quite yet.
What a phenomenal race we're witnessing. We're going to take a quick break and our coverage continue. You're watching the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. We are back in a moment. All right, let's go back out and take a look at the elites. I mean, Dina, you look at these watches, they're pretty much mandatory if you're an elite runner.
Yes, and so many of the athletes out there today are wearing them. My husband is one of them, out on the streets today trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon. This watch is going to keep him on pace just like it did during his training. So you will see them checking their wrists every now and then to make sure they're, maybe certain people run within a heart rate zone. But the point is having all the metrics right there and knowing which metrics to look at to see progress and to work with your training program, alter your training program so that you can see progress. You can see the women again on a slight downhill on this course, so you might see their cadence and pace start to pick up. Their watch would pick up that information. Even on the Coros app, I'm going to stick with that for a second, it can keep your body in balance and tell you if your left and right sides are in balance, how you're landing your stride. So it is a lot of information to take in, but you take that information all for the sake of progressing forward and trying to be your best on that day and see a new personal best in your future. The women still looking so strong here as they're on this long stretch of road with some great crowd support on the side.
5:41 for their last mile. They hit 18 miles in 1 hour 40 minutes and 11 seconds. That was a 5:41 mile followed after a 5:48 mile.
You can see they arrived in the front stretch in Century City, the front stretch of the course. Of course, they will make a turn and then head down the back stretch to the conclusion of the marathon.
They're just passing 30K, and in the lead in the black singlet with the white singlet underneath is your defending champion, Stacy Ndiwa. To her right in the blue and yellow is Olga Mazuronak from Belarus, and just behind them in the electric orange and black, Kumeshi Sachala from Ethiopia. And behind her, to the left of your screen, it's Sidi Baisa from Ethiopia. A talented field, all looking really smooth at this point as they take on the crowds. It's important to really embrace all those cheers along the course to give you energy along the way. So if you see that the race is headed your way, you're sitting there following our coverage, jump out onto the streets and give a shout out to the runners. It means a lot to them. You'll get inspired yourself, and now we've got a split screen to see what the men are doing.
You know, and it seems to me, Dina, that Sidi Baisa from Ethiopia has been the one who's been hiding most throughout this day. She has been tucked in right behind on that right-hand side of that pack. I mean, Stacy Ndiwa has done a lot of leading. Olga Mazuronak has done a lot of the leading. Kachala has been in the middle of the dance. She hasn't done much leading herself. But Sidi Baisa in the second row left is the one who's really done none of the work and hiding most, and that usually is a pretty good sign.
Being quiet in the early stages and letting everybody else do the work for you is a great place to be. When they start to fade and fatigue in the later stages of the race, you can move around and use that as your time to pounce and put in a surge. So maybe she is being strategic here, past 30K. Again, they're going through water stops and really great fan coverage on the side of the road, and that all matters when you are getting into these later stages of the race, taking everything as inspiration as the miles go on.
And both the men and the women are on Santa Monica Boulevard. The women's 30-kilometer split was a 17-minute and 17-second 5K split between 25 and 30K. I say that because the first 5K of the race was 17:17. The second 5K, 2:10K, was another 17:16. That's how solid and steady state these women are running all the way. I think they've got running left in their legs. There's going to be a lot of fireworks in the final stages of this women's race.
Absolutely, and physiologically speaking, running an even pace is the most efficient way to run. So they are running very efficiently right now, and that's a good lesson for the masses too. To put in surges and to play around with pace really does burn the vital sugars that you need in the later stages of a marathon. So running an even pace is the best way to tackle a marathon, and they're doing that. This is a great lesson in how to run a marathon. Surround yourself with people that are running your pace and clip off the miles evenly. You see Olga from Belarus looking at her watch, making sure she's within her means. A lot of information they can get on their wrist, giving them feedback as to where they are. doing the math on how much road is ahead of them.
A lot of times, Dina, I see athletes literally look at their watch not to see what their cumulative time is, but back timing, how much time do I still have to run?
That's right.
Because you have this much energy. Do I feel like I can, if I attack now, can I carry it all the way to the line?
Right, and one of my favorite views on this course is when we go up into the sky and we get a visual of seeing these athletes from above and seeing this gap kind of close between the women who are leading right now and the men who are chasing them down.
You know, Gil Levis is joining us from Sky 5. Gil, what can you tell us about what you're seeing?
Well, Darren, we're just passing the Mormon Temple right now on Santa Monica. Now, this is the elite leaders here, the women, but let me come out and show you how close the men are. It's not too far back here on Santa Monica Boulevard. I'll come out and tilt up here and we'll find them for you in just a second. But as I zoom in, you'll see their lead group here coming in. So really about 3 or 4 blocks back at this point, and it looks like we're at about mile, I think it's almost 20. Coming up to mile 20 shortly, but there's the men's group there, the elite group, and the women ahead of them for it looks like it's about a mile, maybe a little less than a mile at this point.
So 5 men chasing down 4 women, and we will continue to track this amazing story that's playing out in the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon. Our coverage continuing in just a moment. We are back here at the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. You're looking at the elite men and the elite women. It looks like the men are starting to fray a little bit. A single file developing here,
Yep.
Tony.
Dominic Ngeno is in the lead.
You see the elite women.
And they have still yet to find their Dominic and Cosmos breakaway runners. It's getting pretty late in the day. They're passing 21 miles, getting near 35 kilometers, 21.7. A lot of times internationally, these athletes don't deal in miles, they deal in kilometers. And in the marathon, they break things down into 5-kilometer increments. There are 8 5-kilometer increments, plus a little extra at the end to make up the 42.2 kilometers. But that way, you're not thinking about the entire distance as one, you're breaking it down so psychologically it's all easier to handle.
Yeah, and when you look at still Olga Mazuronak of Belarus on the lead of this pack and running off of each other's shoulders, it's Stacy and Diwa, our defending champion, Kumeshi Sachala from Ethiopia, and it's Siri Baisa from Ethiopia. So still a strong pack. Their turnover still looks great, but it's Olga that continues to lead this race mile after mile. Mile 22, we are running out of real estate. They're going to make this turn very soon, start heading back up into Century City, and then they'll be able to see that the men are right behind them.
Fascinating part of this course is that you run it on one side and you make that U-turn and go back towards Century City for the conclusion of the race. But I was saying this in the commercial break that I love this part of the race because then you find out what you're really made of. It's that moment of truth that is soon coming where we will find out which athlete has the stamina to pull it down the stretch and finish the job.
The only woman that has any experience on this course is Stacy and Diwa. And she said she learned a lot from having run on this course and realizing how hilly it was, both ups and downs, and especially the upgrade and uphill in the final kilometer. She knows that. These other women probably have not done that, but Olga has now turned that screw, and you can tell because they're not running in as tight and knit a pack anymore. So Olga, it's not a breakaway move, Dina, it's more of a test.
Absolutely, and I've seen Olga throw in these little tests throughout the race to see if any of them can be a breaking moment, but the pack is still 4 strong and everybody looks so good. I'm gonna agree with you, Tony, that it's Asire Baisa who has done no work this entire race. She's just patiently been tucked into this pack and just ebbing and flowing with the pace changes that are coming with all the turns, and she's really reading the runners as opposed to having to make decisions on her own. And I think she's in a great position as they move into the sun and into the shade. Some of the recommendations I was giving runners before race day yesterday was, if it does start to feel hot out there, make sure you're getting on that shady side of the street, because every degree matters. You can see the men just navigated that same turn that Olga made a surge on just moments prior, so that gap is closing.
And the third man is 20 seconds in arrears of Cosmos on the left and Dominic Geno on the right. Dominic in the A6 red, Cosmos Kiplimo, his competitor, 25 years of age, a 209.44 personal best, while Dominic has a personal best of 207.26. Now this is his fourth marathon. He was second at the Nice-Cannes Marathon in France in November of 2021. He ran 2:13 in his debut. Milan 2023, last April, he was ninth in 2:11.23. But then he got more training. He hooked up with Peter B., his coach, and in Eindhoven in October, he ran 2:07.26. So he really found his measure once he hooked up with Peter B. as a good coach and joined that ASICS Choco project in Kaptagat, and now he's a 2:07 man. Take a look over his shoulder just to make sure if there's any threat coming from behind. There doesn't look to be any, and so now they just focus their attention on one another. Whereas Olga Mazuronak from Belarus, living in Irvine, California, continues to dominate the front of the women's race, but she has still not gotten rid of anyone since that McKenna Morley fell off maybe 5 or 6 miles ago. These four women are still locked straight together.
We've seen Olga Mazuronak looking at her watch several times. It seems like she's starting to put her foot on the pedal a little bit.
You know, there's a Kenyan way of racing. I mean, it's like Ryan Hall, the great American, used to say, the pace never settles. It's like, yeah, you go through a mile in maybe 5 minutes, but a big part of that mile will be in 4:35, and the other part of the mile will be in 5:07. It never settles. So she gets on the accelerator and she backs off. Then she gets on the accelerator and she backs off. And that lack, that changing that pace, yo-yoing back and forth, has a tendency to, wear the other people out.
And when you look at where the inspiration comes from, we talked about Olga and trying to run for her country and really try to defy politics and show that they have no place in sports. And then you look at Stacy and Diwa trying to defend her title, but I love Stacy's style of running. She's great at cross country. This is a cross country style course because it does demand you to navigate the hills and the rolling terrain and the turns. So she has so much success in cross country as well.
You want to know how tough Olga is? At the 2018 European Championships in Berlin, at the 10-kilometer mark, she got a nosebleed and it wouldn't stop. The race was difficult enough. The competition was obviously very stern, and with a bloody nose that just streamed down onto her singlet, she still had enough gumption to win the race. So she's one tough character.
Wow, she's also the winner of the 2014 Cal International Marathon, another good marathon in California.
Well, she won the California International back in 2014. Set a course record back then in 2:27. I don't know if it's still standing, but so she's got experience here in California. That's in Sacramento. It's one of the great marathons in December. And if you've never done it, California International in Sacramento, certainly a marathon worth looking into.
Yes, and we've said earlier in our coverage to be 5th at the Tokyo Olympic Marathon, 5th at the World Championships in Doha in 2019.
And there you see the men, 2 men now chasing down 4 women. Our elite men were in top. That's Cosmos Kiplimo and Dominic Ngeddo.
Here's the turn.
we're talking about. Now
like
they come down the backstretch.
4 miles left.
And the women will look across the street and see that the men are not far behind.
wow.
So maybe that's incentive to put in another move.
Look at that 22nd mile by the men, 4:41. I mean, that is flying. But now it's going to be upgrade. We'll see who's got what. This is the last 4 miles. This will be telling. Who's got what in the tank? It's no easy ride from this point forward.
And in 2022, it was the women who powered up these last 4 miles when that was the differential was only 8 seconds. The women taking the win because they navigated the hills a little better. So we'll see how that is. 4 miles of racing still to come, and the men are right behind them.
But they started early.
Yeah. In case you're just joining us, the women took off this morning at 6:43. The men were supposed to leave at 7 o'clock flat. That was supposed to be a 17-minute head start for the women, but the men left early. A little controversy. They left, we believe, at 6:56.
Yeah, somebody 55, 56, somewhere either 4 minutes and change sooner than they should have.
So,
but right now, this is pretty darn exciting.
It's about to happen.
But what we could do is see when if the pass is made, and when it is made. Yeah, here they are. When the pass is made, do you have a stopwatch, Dina?
I don't.
No, we can sort of get a watch and see if the women. There's a race on Cape Cod called the Falmouth Road Race, one of the great road races, 7-mile road race, and they have a virtual challenge where the women have a head start, but they don't chase the women down. The minute the women cross the finish line, they start the clock, and then the time ticks down to 0. If the men get there before 0, they win the challenge. And so it's the same thing. Let's see when the men cross the line, let's see how long it takes the women to finish, and if it's within 4 or 5 minutes, we can tell who would have won the challenge if it was done correctly. If only this was the final mile, huh?
Yeah.
But the men are on the opposite side of the street. They're both just, look at it, both these races just locked into themselves. And Olga, now it looks like we're losing.
Kameshi
Sachala
is coming off the back of
Sachala losing ground as Olga pressing.
The men passing Sachala right now and closing in on the top 3 women.
Yeah, this is the McCourt Foundation Marathon Chase, the race within the race. And it's about to happen now as our elite men, Cosmas Kiplimo and Dominic Ingeno, passing
206.50,
the elite women.
206.50, 207 essentially, 206.50.
And Stacy and Diwa look like she's just going to tuck right in and try to draft off these men for a little bit. I love that
smart.
tenacity.
Gave her a little momentum, huh?
And for the first time in this race, we see that Olga is off the back of the 3 as she works her way back up to try to take charge.
Okay, we are in the final 4 miles of this race. We are going to take another break. We will be back with more of the 39th running of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. We're going to keep an eye on the elite races that are playing out in front of you, but right now I want to check in with my colleague Wendy Burt. She's at mile 15 in West Hollywood. And we welcome you back to our coverage of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. We have some separation in the women's elite field. Stacy Ndiwa has taken a decisive lead.
They passed the 1 mile to go sign, and she took off immediately, leaving no room for anyone to react to her. So she has really dropped Olga Mazuronak and Atside Baisa in in one sweeping move. She is not looking back, looking at her watch, doing the math on how much time is left in front of her, but with less than a mile to go, we must be coming close to the men's finish as well.
And she knew exactly where she was on this course as opposed to her opponents. And experience on a race course, especially one that is not dead flat, that's got hills, knowing where they are and where to expend your energy, knowing how far that hill is before the finish line is a big advantage if you've got running left in your legs.
And you really see her working now, right? She almost looks smoother now, higher arm carriage, longer stride, like she finally found the stride that's working for her. She looks fantastic.
Her last marathon was in Chicago last fall as we go back to Dominic Ngeno. And boy, he's leaning back on that stride, Dina. His face is one of agony. But Cosmas Kiplimo doesn't look like he's got anything left in the tank to go attack him.
It's too hard to make up this gap.
Oh, there's a hill. There's that hill we're talking about. Here's this hill.
Yes,
oh
and really, let's look over my shoulder to make sure I have enough room to cover this distance ahead. But the crowds are coming out in this late morning St. Patrick's Day to crown the champion of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS, and it is looking like a good day to be Dominic Ngeno.
Wow.
Oh, he's suffering. And the more he turns around, Dina, some coaches say, don't turn around because it gives fuel to your opponent who sees, oh, this guy's hurting. But you can see, look how forward-leaning Cosmas Kiplimo is as well. That's a compensation. He's not in a full stride either.
Yes, and it seems like every few strides he's looking at his watch, looking over his shoulder, looking around to see where that finish line is. He's making this final turn, and he will see the finish line in front of him.
It's so desperately close, but so darn far.
What an incredible performance by Ngeno.
Yeah, he will have earned this victory if indeed it is his. Because he suffered the last 5 kilometers of this race. When he took the lead, right after he took the lead, he started to suffer. And he's been suffering ever since, but that's it, the ability to withstand that pain.
It's so fascinating that he trained with last year's LA champ, Jamel Yemmer. And Yemmer performed well today, and it looks like Ngeno is going to follow suit.
It looks like, but you just can't, it's hard to say. I mean, his stride is short, the paint is etched on his face, but he's really using those arms, Dina, to help propel himself forward. Your arms help lift those legs. He sees the finish line now.
He can taste it.
Yep. Maybe one more look over his shoulder to make sure there's not a sprint coming from behind. But Cosmas Kiplimo will not catch Dominic Ngeno, who wins the 2024 Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS. And he's an ASICS athlete.
And we have to give notice to who was holding the finish line tape. It was the CEO of ASICS who we've heard from at the starting line, Kodama-san, and on the other side of the tape was Olympic gold medalist Joan Benoit Samuelson, who is celebrating the 40th anniversary of her medal. When I asked her yesterday how it feels to be celebrating this many years later, she said, I have no idea where the time went. I said, I'll tell you where it went. You just ran the Tokyo Marathon. You keep giving back to the sport. That's what you've been doing with your time. It's just wonderful to see her here in Los Angeles celebrating the 40th anniversary.
What incredible drama.
And here is Stacy Ndiwa, who's going to come in as the women's champion, not far from the men.
And you see Olga right there. She can't chase her down. But what a performance by her. A terrific story in its own right. But Stacy Ndiwa closing in on the finish line.
She will defend her title. She really timed this race beautifully with 1 mile to go. She made her move. Last year, she made her move at mile 19, made it a little later this year. Again, that's Joan Benoit Samuelson holding the tape with Kodama-san of ASICS.
Ndiwa, our back-to-back champion here at the LA Marathon.
Say it, keep her up, keep her up, keep her up.
What a relief. Olga Mazuronak from Belarus, who really did so much of the leading through this whole race, ends up in second. What a great run by her.
Oh, look at the joy, the exuberance, the incredible accomplishment.
That's Haron Lagat in the yellow. That's her coach.
It's Sidi Baisa in third. Great racing by the Ethiopians.
What a wonderful race finish. Incredible drama here at the LA Marathon. We're going to take a break, come back with our champions. You're watching the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS.
70 countries represented here in the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon. One of those countries, Belgium. This is where our second place professional woman comes from. She ran a 2-hour, 25-minute, 48-second marathon. She is from Belgium. Please welcome second place, Volha Mazurёnok. And your winner for the women's professional race, 2 hours, 25 seconds, 2 hours, 25 minutes, 28 seconds. Also from Kenya, Stacy Ndwa. And now one of the unique features of this marathon is we like to give both genders a fighting chance for the chase to take the overall win. Presenting the check for the chase, Mr. McCourt from the McCourt Foundation. Please welcome Stacy Ndwa, our overall winner of the chase here today. An additional $10,000 going to her today, all part of the chase category here at the 39th annual Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS.
All right. Hey, crowd, give it up for these guys. Aren't they amazing? Darren, send it back.